Well, John Lake came to Spokane in 1915, and from 1915 to 1920, he put together a team of men and women that he called healing technicians that prayed for the sick in the city of Spokane. And in that 5-year period, there were 100,000 documented healings in the city.
What happened with the hospitals?
Well, the hospitals weren't real excited about this because the sick decided that it was better to go let Jesus do the work in their body rather than go to the hospital and receive surgery and a bill.
Hello and welcome to Long for Truth. My name is Daniel Long. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast, thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate you stopping by. And if you are watching on YouTube and you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do that right now. Hit that subscribe button and then click the little bell icon so that you'll be notified every time I upload. And as for you guys that are listening to the podcast, I will make sure that you have a link to this YouTube video in the podcast show notes so you can check that out as well. Okay, we're going to be doing some real-time investigation on this episode of Long for Truth. We're actually going to be looking into the claim that between the years 1915 and 1920, during the time that Lake was in Spokane, Washington, that he performed over 100,000 healings. And that during that time, between 1915 and 1920, Spokane was named the healthiest city in the United States as a result of John G. Lake's healing ministry. We're going to be looking at those claims. We're going to be looking at some statistics. We're going to be doing a real-time search in searches, I should say, in newspapers.com. And we're going to search, first of all, for the popularity of John G. Lake. Was John G. Lake as popular as these modern-day charismatic and Pentecostal leaders make him out to be? I mean, these guys like Cal Pierce and Robert Liardon and Kenneth Copeland and Curry Blake, these guys make John G. Lake out to be greater than the apostles themselves. I mean, think about it. 100,000 healings in 5 years. Now, not just 100,000 healings, 100,000 documented healings. That's what they say. So we're going to be doing a popularity search. We're going to see how popular Lake was because, listen, if Lake performed that many healings, and if because of those healings, Spokane was dubbed the healthiest city in the United States, wouldn't Lake be all over the newspapers? I mean, he would be all over the newspapers. Not just newspapers here in the United States, but newspapers all over the world. Because think about it. That's a lot of healings, documented healings. Spokane would be flooded with sick people. People would be flocking to Spokane, Washington during that time to be healed from their various infirmities by the healer, John G. Lake. So we're going to be doing a popularity search. We're going to be checking that out. Now, what I plan to do is I want to compare John G. Lake's popularity to Charles Haddon Spurgeon and to D.L. Moody and to John Alexander Dowie. We're going to compare those, compare the popularity between Lake and those three men. And we're going to see just how popular John G. Lake was because, you know, these charismatic and Pentecostal leaders, they make him out to be this great apostle, this guy that was more popular than Jesus himself, it seems. I mean, he did more healings than Jesus did while he was on the earth, right? 100,000 healings. That's a lot of healing. So we're going to be looking at that. We're also and by the way, I've already done all this. I've already looked into this, and I really do think that what we look at is going to surprise you. But before we get started on all of that, let me introduce you to Cal Pierce. Cal Pierce is the director of the Healing Rooms Ministries, and he's the one that God told specifically to redig the wells of the John G. Lake Healing Room. So we're going to be looking right now at a segment from the 700 Club from back in 2014. All right. So let's go ahead and check that out right now.
At the age of 16, John G. Lake gave his life to Christ during a Salvation Army revival meeting. As a young adult, he moved to Africa and began a powerful miracle ministry. In 1914, Lake returned to the U.S. and settled down in Spokane, Washington. And there he opened up the Healing Rooms, a place where people could pray and seek God. Over the next 5 years, his ministry documented more than 100,000 healings. Spokane became known not only as the healthiest city in America, but the healthiest city in the world.
John G. Lake was a man who had a hunger for God, had a hunger for the truth, the Word, and out of that Word, he come to the discovery that God wasn't just able to heal, but He was willing to heal.
Now, Cal Pierce directs the Healing Rooms Ministries. In the mid-1990s, as a California real estate developer, he was preparing for retirement. But he says after much prayer and fasting, God showed him another plan for his life.
Finally, at the end of the fast, the Holy Spirit could get into my spirit. And He said, I want you to redig those generational wells of healing that John G. Lake had in Spokane. Reopen that well after 80 years, and that's what we did.
The Healing Rooms closed in 1935. Pierce purchased the original property, then reopened the Healing Rooms, eventually relocated it to another area of the city. The ministry then expanded to the point where it now takes up an entire block of downtown Spokane.
Healing Rooms is an international ministry, and it activates the saints of God into the work of the ministry. And the purpose is to get the body of Christ, or God's people, healed and restored.
Well, here we are in the Healing Room hallway. There are 8 healing rooms. You've got the Fire Room, the Portal Room, the Waves of Glory Room, and many others. Folks come from all over the world and here in America, specifically to Spokane, looking for healing and God's touch.
All right. As you were watching that video, you should have noticed some newspapers coming up right at the beginning. Some newspaper clippings coming up at the top of the screen there. Those they make that out like that's a big deal. Those were advertisements. Lake was a big advertisement guy. He used to put ads for the Church of Spokane and for in Portland all over the papers. I mean, that's what he did. He paid for advertisements, and so that's what they were. They were advertisements. Also, you heard Cal Pierce say that it was because of fasting. It was through fasting and prayer that God spoke to Cal Pierce and specifically told him to redig the wells, right?
In the mid-1990s, as a California real estate developer, he was preparing for retirement. But he says after much prayer and fasting, God showed him another plan for his life.
Finally, at the end of the fast, the Holy Spirit could get into my spirit. And He said, I want you to redig those generational wells of healing.
Well, in case you didn't know, this fasting and prayer was taking place at the gravesite of John G. Lake. That's right, Cal Pierce was doing some grave sucking. And that's not anything strange, really, from a man who is associated with people at Bethel in Redding, California. Cal Pierce was an elder at Bethel, and he was an elder before Bill Johnson got there. And after Johnson's arrival, he was still an elder when Bethel was just called Bethel Assembly of God. Let me just show you here really quickly. So if you look right here, you can see right here on the screen, this is from way back, all right? And you look at the top here, look at this date, September the 11th through the 14th, 2002 in Spokane, Washington, the Spiritual Hunger Conference, all right? And you can see the speakers there at the Spiritual Hunger Conference. Now, check this out. There's Chan. Now, look at this picture here of Bill Johnson. This is just, I'm going to zoom in here. Look at that. Look at that guy. Yeah, this is Bill Johnson, senior pastor of Bethel Assembly of God in Redding, California, now just known as Bethel Church, Redding, California. And there's Cal there and his wife And so, yeah, he was associated with, just in case you didn't know, he is associated with the whole Bethel group. Here is another, let's see, here's another Healing Rooms conference. Now, look at this. This is from September 8th, 2007. And here are the speakers. Look at that. You have Heidi Baker speaking. And you have Bill and Benny. And you got, well, just Bill Johnson. That's a picture of Benny there, his wife. And, of course, you got Don, it looks like Don Potter there. And you know, so, yeah, he was definitely associated with the whole Bethel crew there. Let's go ahead and look at some of the claims. Now, I've got a couple of books here that I want to show you that I'm using. First of all, let's put this one down for a second. This right here, that is a that's a book that is by Kenneth Copeland, and it's a pretty thick book. You can see. There we go. Trying to get my camera right for this thing. You can see that's it's a pretty big book, and in this book you have the claim that Lake healed over 100,000 people here. So this is from the Copeland book here. This one right here. I'm just going to read what it says here. By 1924, newspapers were calling Lake the nationally known healing evangelist. He was reported to have established a chain of 40 churches and missions in the United States and Canada, and by now his congregations had dubbed him Dr. Lake. And why not? In Spokane alone, 100,000 healings had been documented. Okay, and recorded within just 5 years. That's the Copeland book. All right, and then here on the back, didn't have to go far to see this. Shortly thereafter, Lake's Divine Healing Institute made Spokane, Washington, as documented by the United States government, the healthiest city in the world. So let's find, we're going to be doing some investigation. We're going to find out, was it the healthiest city in the world? Now, I'm going to tell you right now, that between 1917 and 1918, it was pronounced the healthiest city in the United States. All right. But there is one thing that kind of makes that almost null and void, and we'll get to that later on in the program after we do our popularity search. Remember, we're gonna search the popularity of John G. Lake as well, and compare his popularity to men like Spurgeon and Moody and Dowie. Okay, so that's coming up. Then we have this book right here, God's Generals by Robert Liardon, and on page where is it? 185 of the book. Okay. He mentions the healing rooms at Spokane. This is what he says. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. Lake took advantage of his good friend's offer and began to travel the nation. First, he went to Spokane, Washington, where he would stay and set up healing rooms in an old office building. It's estimated that some 100,000 healings occurred in those rooms. Yeah, and we're going to I'm looking at doing another video later on Cal Pierce, because Cal Pierce made a huge blunder about those healing rooms in Spokane. He made a huge blunder, and that'll be on another video. Anyway, you'll see that. All right, so this is from In His Image Ministries. Now, this is, again, you can look up here. You can see I'm using the Wayback Machine, because these are just really some old links. And if you try to find these links without using the Wayback Machine, they're just dead links. You can't find them anywhere. But let's go down here. Okay, so right here, it says, Dr. Lake continued ministering in Spokane until 1920. From 1915 until 1920, the team of 16 divine healing technicians and Dr. Lake recorded over 100,000 healings. So that is that there. All right, now let's take a look at some statistics here. What about the population of Spokane? Was Spokane, how many people were in Spokane at that time? Okay, so right here I have the historylink.org up. I've got the 1920 census, all right? And I want to go down here and show you right here, okay, from the 1920 census. Remember, Lake was performing these healings between 1915 and 1920. So how many people were in Spokane, Washington during that time, according to the 1920 census? Let me just zoom in here, okay, so you can see it. Spokane, 141,289 people living in Spokane in 1920 when they took the 1920 census. So that you have an 1,885 increase of 1.4% above 1910 count, which was 139,404. All right, so just with the population count there, 141,289 people. That's all that was living in Spokane at that time. That's all the people that were there. So you have 100,000 people that were supposedly healed by John G. Lake. What about the other 41,289 people? Now, I'm sure people would say, well, you know, it wasn't everybody in Spokane that was being healed. There were people coming from all over the country. There were people coming from all over the state of Washington, all that other stuff, I'm sure. But, I mean, you can see what I'm trying to say here with the statistics, right? During the 1920 census, there were 141,289 people counted in that census living in Spokane, Washington. And yet, don't you think that if Lake was, first of all, how many sick people, first of all, of 141,289 people are there? Were there 100,000 sick people? I mean, it's just silly. It's just ridiculous. Now, years ago, Cal Pierce was on the Sid Roth show, and he claimed that because of all of these healings, that hospitals actually were shutting down because, well, so many people were getting healed, they didn't need the hospitals anymore. So let's just take a look at that really quickly. I've got just a quick little guide here to the Edgecliff Sanatorium. This is from Washington State University Manuscripts, Archives, and Special Collections here. All right, so let's go over here and look at the history of the Edgecliff Sanatorium here. All right, so it says Edgecliff Sanatorium, a Spokane County tuberculosis hospital, was established when? In 1914, so 1 year before Lake opened up his healing room, okay? So you would think that this would be one of those hospitals that shut down, right? So approximately, at the time, 6 miles from Spokane, Washington. Opening its doors in 1915, Edgecliff had facilities for 58 adults and 35 children. Now look at this. By 1918, so it's still around, this tuberculosis hospital. By 1918, when an additional building was under construction, all right, late in 1919, so we're still having the hospital still there. It's still standing. It hasn't shut down yet. In 1919, Dr. Frank Stevenson Miller succeeded Dr. Albert Ernest. Okay, and then look here. By 1920, the hospital had 140 beds. Now, in 1915, it had 58 adults and 35 children. But by 1920, it had 140 beds. So this is just one example. I understand this is just one example, but yet here we have this, the Edgecliff Sanatorium, a Spokane County tuberculosis hospital. And it was around from 1915 to 19, and still, you know, look down here, you got a date ending at 1956 in this biography. So that just kind of shows you here that they did still have the tuberculosis hospital, and tuberculosis was a big deal during that time. All right, so we're over at newspapers.com. Now we're going to do some searches here. I do have an article up here. Look at this. Here of Spokane, healthiest city in all the world. All right. This is from February the 26th, 1917. All right. This is an article that proclaims that the Spokane is the healthiest city in all the world. You see here that it says the Chamber of Commerce will hold its regular Thursday meeting and luncheon tomorrow, at which Dr. J.R. Anderson, city health officer, will give a talk of the healthiest city in the world, Spokane. All right. So now how they know this, I don't know. But here's something that's really, really funny. I want to show you something here in 1917. This is just 1917. All right. Healthiest city. Okay. So you have Salt Lake is one of the healthiest cities in 1917. Now, let me just show you this. Look at this. This is Chicago. Okay. This is 1917. All right. Let's go back over here to newspapers.com. We're going to just do this here. Back over to newspapers.com. Okay. And we're going to go to Spokane, healthiest city in the world. And look at the date here. Look at the date here of healthiest city. This is 26th of February, 1917. All right. Okay. Back over here, we have Chicago and on September 17th, saying it is the healthiest city. Chicago declared to be the healthiest city in the world. So wait a minute. Who was the healthiest city in the world? Was it Chicago or was it Spokane? I don't know. But it was one of the two, right? Because what are we going to do? Have a battle here between who is the healthiest city in all the world? But you have, again, this is February 26, 1917. We go back over here. This is September 17th, 1917. And you have Chicago being declared the healthiest city in the world. Now, there's something else that you need to see as well. All right, let's go back over to my profile here, and let's go back to Save Searches. Okay, and let's take a look here at Spokane being the healthiest city in the world. Okay, so Spokane, healthiest city in the world, February 26, 1917. 1917, 1918, all right, 1918. Now look at this. You have one from 1913, the Spokane Chronicle. Let's go look at that one. 10,000 circulars are being sent east by the Spokane Chamber of Commerce on the weather. Here reading, how's the weather? It's always fine in Spokane, the healthiest city in the United States. All right, so Spokane has claimed itself the healthiest city in the United States when? In 1913 as well. So 1913, Lake wasn't even there in Spokane, and it was claimed to be the healthiest city. All right, so that's 1913. Let's go over to 1914. All right. Okay, right when Lake got there. Okay, so it's extremely gratifying, of course, that Spokane leads all cities in the United States except Seattle in the matter of public health. The splendid showing is due not merely to climate and to the character of the population, but to the energetic efforts of the health department of the city. It should inspire both the officials and the public to redouble the effort to make Spokane the healthiest city, not only in the United States, but of the whole world. Okay, so this is 1914. Okay, so let's look at this one. We have Spokane again. Look at this. This is from September 11th, 1895. The early autumn rains have brought to Spokane a cooler, pure atmosphere. The air once more is clear, fresh, full of ozone. Just such air makes Spokane the healthiest city in America. Just such air as makes Spokane the healthiest city in America. So Spokane has claimed itself to be the healthiest city in America several times. All right, so let's do a comparison here on newspapers.com, a popularity comparison. We're going to find out how popular Lake really was. Now, if Lake has 100,000 healings under his belt between 1915 and 1920, then the newspapers would be filled with stories about John G. Lake. You would have not just newspapers in this country, but newspapers all over the world. You would have these stories would be published everywhere. John G. Lake's name would be a household name, right? It just wasn't. All right. You're going to be surprised at what we find here. So this is what I'm going to do. All right. Let's just put in a search here, John G. Lake. All right. All right. So we've got John G. Lake's name in here. We're going to see how popular he really was. All right. You got his name in the search box there, and I've got a date range between 1915 and 1935. Now, remember, what should appear should be just thousands and thousands of of newspaper articles about John G. Lake. Okay, now let's do a search. 1,380 matches. Okay, between 1915 and 1935. That's it. All right. Now you might think that's a lot, but let me show you something here. All right, so now we're back over in newspapers.com. We're in the search again, and we've got Charles Haddon Spurgeon's name in quotations there, C.H. Spurgeon. We've got the year 1855 through 1992. That was right, or 1892, I'm sorry. That was right around 1850s is when he was really getting really popular, it seems, at least anyway from the searches that I've seen. Let's just see how many hits we get here on newspapers.com for C.H. Spurgeon. 9,577 searches, or I'm sorry, 77 hits. All right. So you have, you have this article here talking about Spurgeon's illness. It looks like, is that what it's talking about? Yeah. Mr. Spurgeon's illness. The Reverend C.H. Spurgeon had a better night with more natural sleep and less delirium. So that's in 1891. Okay. Spurgeon died in 1892, but you can see here 9,577 matches. So you can see here C.H. Spurgeon, Reverend C.H. Spurgeon, Reverend C.H. Spurgeon. You know, you can just go right down the list here and you can see them. Okay, so back over John G. Lake, 1,380 matches between 1915, the year he got to Spokane, and 1935, the year he died. C.H. Spurgeon, what do we got? We got 9,577 matches. Now, let's go over and let's do the same thing with D.L. Moody. Okay, here we are, here we are at newspapers.com, and in the search box, I've got D.L. Moody there, and I've got a date range from 1871, the year he met Iris Sankey, to 1899. Let's search and see what we get here. 16,969 matches, okay? This is D.L. Moody, right? Now, D.L. Moody didn't heal 100,000 people. Charles Haddon Spurgeon didn't heal 100,000 people, but John G. Lake supposedly healed 100,000 people. We got a match of 16,969 for D.L. Moody. For Charles Spurgeon, we've got 9,577 matches on newspapers.com. But what do we have for John G. Lake again? Oh, yeah, 1,380 matches for John G. Lake. Now, there's the popularity. Now, we're going to go over here again, and we're going to do another search on newspapers.com. All right, so now we are now we're looking at John Alexander Dowie. Okay, we've got his name in quotation marks here, and I'm just putting 1 year in here. All right, 1903. That's the year that Dowie made his trip to New York City to spread his poison to New York City in order to evangelize it. We're going to see how many hits we get from John Alexander Dowie in 1903. Let's see what we get. 6,467 matches for 1 year. And all right, so that's more than Lake, right? Remember, what does Lake got? 1,380. What does John Alexander Dowie got? 6,467 matches, right? D.L. Moody, 16,969 matches. C.H. Spurgeon, 9,577 matches. And this is just newspapers.com. All right, this is just newspapers.com. Now, we want to do one more search. We want to find out if the newspapers mention John G. Lake's 100,000 healings and whether or not he had those 100,000 healings. So let's take a look there. Let's find out. All right. So in the search box right here, I've got John G. Lake in quotation marks, healing rooms in quotation marks, and 100,000 healings in quotation marks. So you would think that if he healed all of these people, that we'd find tons and tons of newspaper articles. Let's see what we get. 4 matches. And where are they for? 2006, 2011, and 2011. So if we click on it, it's just basically a history of what supposedly happened with John G. Lake, and it just shows his grave there. So you can see here, just from looking at these newspaper articles, or these newspaper searches in newspapers.com, that John G. Lake just wasn't very popular, at least during this time, compared to men like D.L. Moody and John Alexander Dowie and Charles Haddon Spurgeon, as we did a search in newspapers.com. You also saw that even though Spokane was proclaimed the healthiest city in 1917 and 1918, it was also said it was the healthiest city in 1913, and I think it was, 1895? And also Chicago was also in 1917 considered to be the healthiest city in the world. So as you can see then, Lake wasn't as popular as these charismatic leaders make him out to be. And there's really no evidence that Lake actually healed 100,000 people. Just because you have guys like Kenneth Copeland and Cal Pierce making these kinds of claims doesn't mean that it is true.